So a little while ago, I was in the mood to watch a movie, and so this time I went to Netflix, and I saw among, I think it was the critically acclaimed list, this movie that I'd never heard of before, called Woman of the Hour. I saw the little, because when you hover over a movie in Netflix, it'll show you a little teaser of what the movie's gonna be. And so I saw that The Dating Game was involved in it. Now I have seen another movie that involves The Dating Game, a movie directed by George Clooney, written kind of by Charlie Kaufman, called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which was an adaptation of the book, the fake memoir written by Chuck Barris, the guy who created The Dating Game. Kind of a weird story, that one. But so I've already seen a movie about The Dating Game, or at least a movie that involves The Dating Game. And so this is another one. And so I was, and by the way, if you don't know, The Dating Game was a television show, very popular. It got really popular in the 70s especially. And this movie takes place in the 70s, in the late 70s. I decided to put it on. That's the only thing I knew about it, just from that teaser, was that The Dating Game was involved in it. And so I assumed the title, Woman of the Hour, refers to, because in The Dating Game there's a woman who has to ask questions to bachelors 1, 2, and 3. So she's the woman of the hour. But then the movie begins. Okay, so I'm gonna spoil everything in this movie, because that's what I do with these videos where I talk about movies. Like, I'm not interested. If you're the kind of person who doesn't want to know, anything about a movie before seeing it, then, like, why would I make a video for you? The whole point of making a video about a movie is that I've seen the movie and I want to talk about it. And if I can't talk about it, then what's the point of making a video about it? So I'm going to spoil everything. But I will say the best way to go into this movie, I think, is totally blind, like I did, because it was an interesting experience. And I want to walk you through why that experience was interesting. I know that The Dating Game is involved, but it begins with something completely different. In Wyoming. It actually starts with this shot identical almost to the first shot of 2001: A Space Odyssey, minus the whole what is it, Earthrise, Moonrise shit at the beginning of that movie, the da, da. When it actually gets the Dawn of Man segment, the first thing you see is like a sunrise on a desert landscape. It's getting like confused Matthew. Landscape. Do you remember that? Anyway, so that's what it was reminding me of initially. But then we see these two people out in the Wyoming desert. This kind of big, stocky, long black hair, kind of like Native American looking dude. Even though I don't think he's supposed to be Native American. And the guy who it's based on in real life, because this is based on something in real life, didn't look like that really. He looked more like a white guy. But this guy has kind of an edge of slight Native American look to him, I guess. And he's taking pictures of this woman. And this woman starts kind of babbling to him. Like, she hit upon some, like, about some past relationship that he had with the guy, that she had where the guy died. And she starts crying and feeling kind of embarrassed about crying. And he's like, "No, it's okay, you're beautiful when you cry." And he's like buttering her up while taking these pictures of her. And so immediately the sense that I'm getting is that this guy is trying to like make moves on her when she's vulnerable. He wants to have sex with her, and he like brought her out to this nice place to take pictures of her. And then she's like getting all emotionally worked up because she's like a total mess because I guess her husband died, and so she's still reeling from that. And he's like, "No, it's okay." And he's like using, that's like a tactic, I guess, that some guys will do. They'll use like a woman's grief and emotional distress as their entry point, because then they can be like, "Oh, it's okay." So that was the impression that I was getting at the start of this. I'm like, okay, that's where we are. That's where the dynamic is here. He reaches out to her, and you think he's gonna like stroke her hair or something, but he grabs her by the throat, and he doesn't like immediately start tugging on her, but he just like puts his hand on her throat like this, just to like feel what it's like. And she pulls away. She's like, "What are you doing?" And then he does it more forcefully, and then she pulls away more forcefully, and then he runs her down and chokes her. You think he's choking her to death. I'm like, okay, so he's just gonna kill her? He's not gonna do anything else to her? Well, then the twist is, so he's choked her to death, and then he starts breathing into her mouth to like get her lungs pumping again, so that she can breathe again. So he's resuscitated her after almost killing her, and then it cuts away and you can assume what happened after that. So that was the opening scene of this film about the dating game. Okay, and then it goes into this whole totally different story. So that it's an interesting little hook. It's like, okay, when is this going to come back into the picture? This guy who just, raped and killed this woman. When is he going to come back? Because now we're following this other woman who's this actress in Los Angeles. And she was played by an actress who I knew I recognized somehow. And I actually still don't know where I recognize her from. But I couldn't put a name on her. I was like, I had names, like the name Anna was in my brain, but I couldn't come up with a last name for it. I found out at the end of the movie it was Anna Kendrick. And I also found out when the movie ended that she not only starred in the movie, she directed it as well. Which was a big surprise to me. I didn't even know that she was a director. And it's always interesting to see not just women being directors, but women being directors and stars of a movie. That's interesting to me, because I don't think you see that all too often. Usually, if a director is also starring in his movie, it's a guy. So okay, so Anna Kendrick is this actress in Los Angeles, and she's struggling. The typical setup for a character. It's like, okay, very easy to get to understand what this person is about. Trying to get a career going, trying to start something up, not being very successful at it. Gears start turning in my head. I'm like, okay, so that's why she goes on the dating game. And so, but then what's interesting is that she has this roommate who's her friend, not boyfriend, but he's a guy. He seems kind of older than her, but I assume the actors are kind of the same age, because I don't think Anna Kendrick is young. Even though she looks young in this movie, she takes care of herself. But I assume that in the context of the movie and the story they're telling, there's supposed to be kind of an age difference, because the guy looks kind of old compared to her. And I also recognized him, although I don't know what I recognize him from. He has a YouTube channel. I discovered that. He hasn't really been in a lot of stuff. Maybe somehow I have seen him somewhere on YouTube somewhere. I don't know. But he's this guy, and he's her acting coach, I think. So he's her acting coach and a friend, and he's living with her. They go to a bar together, and then because they're drinking, he's drinking. His feelings for her are starting to spill out. He's getting a little bit touchy-feely, he's doing the thing that I thought the Native American looking guy was gonna do. He's like stroking her hair. And what's interesting about that is that because the movie set up this first scene with this guy just straight up choking this woman half to death, when you're watching this other guy start to get all handsy with Anna Kendrick, the alarm bells are going off in your head, because you've been primed emotionally to expect a certain pattern. And I thought that was really clever. It puts you just even more in the position of understanding where Anna Kendrick's character is, because she's uncomfortable. But then she spills that out to him eventually. She's like, okay, I know what's going on here. and no, we're not going to do this. You can tell that like it stings a lot that he was rejected, and he kind of pouts about it. He's like, okay, do you want to leave then? You know, he's doing the kind of pouty thing. And then she goes, no, I don't want to leave. Because, you know, he is her friend. And so it's this awkward situation where, like, she still wants to, like, be cool with this guy, but he's clearly stung by this rejection, and it's really awkward. And then it cuts to them in bed together, and it shows her, you know, he's asleep, and she's, like, just kind of lying there awake. She didn't really want to have sex with this guy, but she did it because the situation was just so awkward that it kind of necessitated that. And so we're getting some really interesting dynamics being set up here. And I thought that that character would be more important to the story. He really is more there, I think, to kind of add color to the picture, because this movie has certain themes. It's very much a feminist kind of movie, but it's very well done. It's not a pandering movie. Whenever I hear that a movie is like a feminist movie, I get worried, because I really don't like movies that just pander in that way. But no, this is a very, like, well-written film, I think. But anyway, after this, then it cuts to a different story. So we had the first story with the guy killing the girl. You have the second story with Anna Kendrick, and then you have a third story. Suddenly we're following this teenage runaway girl. Where did this come from? So now, what's interesting about that is it feels like the movie it's throwing a lot of different threads that it has to tie together. And what's curious about it is you're watching it, if you have no context for what's going on, you're thinking, how is this all going to tie together? So that kept me interested in the movie. I was wondering, like, how is this all going to happen? And so you have this teenage runaway now that we're following, a third main character. And then the photographer guy comes around, and then it's like, now we know what's going to happen to her, because we've seen what happened to the other woman in Wyoming. And you get the sense in this scene that this guy is pretty smart, because he knows what to say to this girl to get her to come with him, and he can figure out who she is, what her situation is. She's a runaway, she doesn't have anyone looking out for her, and she's gonna be the kind of person who's willing to just kind of on a whim go somewhere with him because she has nothing else going on. And he can figure that out about her immediately and know exactly what things to say to get that to happen. And then it cuts to them driving out into the desert, and then, you know, a question in this moment is this going to be the last time we see this girl? And that was my thought. I was like, okay, are we just setting up a pattern that this guy exists and he's a serial killer? And so this is just another example of that. And because that's what it kind of seems like at first. And you then get another example of this. By this point, it's like routine. We get this other woman and I think this is like New York City. So we're going all over the country with this serial killer guy. This woman in New York City is trying to move furniture up into her apartment, but she was in the shower, and so she's too late to talk to the furniture guys, and they're like, we're on a schedule, we gotta go, we can't help you move. And so she sees the photographer guy just standing there, and she's like, hey, you want to help me move my furniture up? She has a beer with him in her apartment, and they're chilling, they're talking about movies. And you can tell that this guy, not only is this guy clever, but he's educated. He's really smart, because and this is in the 70s when, you know, you couldn't just like know everything. Like I could just Google anything I want and learn anything about anything, and that's why I've gotten so smart. But if you're this like in the know and educated and aware about not just like erudite subjects, but cultural stuff like movie directors and art movements and stuff that they're talking about, like Roman Polanski. They were discussing Roman Polanski. It seems like this guy is a kind of a chameleon, because whatever girl he meets, he knows exactly the things that they're interested in and what he can say to get them comfortable with him. And so for this woman he meets, shooting the shit, talking about Roman Polanski, having a good time. And then eventually the woman starts to kind of be like, okay, I think we're done here. So there's this turn in the conversation where, you know, she's having a good time talking to this guy, but eventually she's like, okay, there's a boundary here. And I don't know if I'm ready for this guy to just be sticking around all day and potentially, you know, having sex with me. So I'm gonna send this guy off and be polite about it. So we see 3 examples of this guy with his serial rapist murderer streak. The one that comes back is that second one with the teenage runaway. And you're not even really expecting her to come back into the story, but she comes back later on. But the other 2 don't come back. The girl in Wyoming at the beginning, she doesn't come back. The girl in New York, talking about Roman Polanski, she doesn't come back. But this runaway does. Then we keep cutting back to Anna Kendrick's character. So it's clear that Anna Kendrick is the main character because she consistently keeps coming back. But the movie kind of plays with us for a while where I wasn't entirely sure what the structure or what the what foothold we were supposed to have in the story until it developed to a certain point where I was able to get it. She gets a job gig doing an episode of The Dating Game. That's when it kind of clicked. I was like, oh, I bet that this guy, this serial killer, is gonna be one of the bachelors on The Dating Game. And I think one of the reasons it clicked for me was because I had heard of this before. Because this actually did happen in real life. There was a serial killer who was one of the bachelors on The Dating Game, and he won that game. But the woman who won the date with him, or the all expenses paid vacation, she canceled. She decided not to go. So she never got killed by this guy. But she might have gotten killed by him if they had gone on this vacation together. It's kind of a famous story that happened, and I'd heard about it before, but I'd kind of forgotten about it. So now watching this movie, we've established this serial killer guy exists, and Anna Kendrick is going on The Dating Game, so it's like, okay, he's gonna be one of the bachelors. And sure enough, he is. And again, this guy, and this is when I realized that not only is this guy clever, not only is this guy smart, but he's an actual genius. Because he knows exactly what Anna Kendrick wants to hear. You know, what kind of responses she's gonna like. He can just suss it out very clearly. And he's intelligent, and he comes across as this smart, sophisticated guy, really clever quips and retorts, is just really charismatic. And especially because at this point, Anna Kendrick is going off script. So there's this whole other kind of story with her character where there's this sleazy host of The Dating Game who is sort of like kind of based on the real guy, even though they have different names. So it's a character, it's not supposed to be the real guy, but he's kind of, his look is based on the real guy. I guess they wrote him to be sleazier than the guy was in real life in order to make a kind of a point about the whole feminist angle on the movie. He's just like, yeah, you gotta look pretty and read the questions as I wrote them. You're beautiful, you'll be good, you know, that kind of that kind of thing. But she ends up going off script because the makeup lady is like, look, fuck that guy. Don't listen to him. It's not like you're coming back next week anyway. You're not on a sitcom. This isn't a job for you. See, do whatever you want. Have fun. You know, it's your show. You're the woman of the hour. And that's kind of the interesting thing about that title. I realized around this point when they actually say, he tells her she's the woman of the hour. She's the woman of the hour. She's the focus of the show. In a sense, she's like the star of this moment. But there's this expendable quality to her. So she's only the woman of this hour, you know? And then next hour we'll get a different girl. And that's kind of how this serial killer treats these women. Oh, this is the woman of this hour. I'll fuck her and then kill her and then move on to something else, go all around the country. They're expendable in a very literal sense, that he's just expending them and destroying them and throwing them away. So there's this kind of double entendre to that title. And it shows, I guess, this sort of dichotomy of kind of glamour and exploitation that Marilyn Manson actually talked about a lot on Mechanical Animals. And so she starts writing her own questions instead of reading the stock questions that she's given on her cue cards. She starts writing her own ones, and they're clever and they're witty, and she's funny, she has a personality, the audience is eating it up. But there's this one woman in the audience, sees Bachelor number 3, the serial killer, and recognizes him because that guy killed her friend, and she saw it, and she ran away a long time ago. And she sees this guy, and she has a panic attack. She's like, oh my God, this guy is the guy. And so there's this whole other, then she has this arc, this side character has this arc where she's trying to get this guy in trouble, but nobody wants to help her. At first, her boyfriend is suspicious for good reason. He's like, okay, I get that, you know, you could be right, this could be the guy, but what if he isn't? And if he isn't, do you really want to, like, slam this guy with such a hardcore charge like rape and murder? For if it's not the guy, then like, you got to be really careful about this. So he had a really good point. She doesn't want to hear it, and then eventually he comes around and he's like, okay. But she tries to talk to the producer. Like, she talks to the security guard, but the security guard acts like he's gonna help her. And I could tell in that moment, this movie has a lot of really good acting, because you can tell by the way people act what's going on in their head, which is a skill that really good actors and directors have, of bringing that to life. And this security guard, you could tell that he wasn't invested in this, and you could tell that he just wanted to get this woman away from him. And so he acts like he's gonna help her, and I remember thinking, is he gonna help her, or is he just stringing her along to get rid of her? And apparently, and you know, come to find out, that's what happens. And then she tries going to the police later on. It can be difficult, especially back then, probably a little bit more than today. It can be difficult to get people in trouble. And a lot of that is just due to the legal system with its innocent until proven guilty philosophy. It's just difficult to actually get people in trouble who are actual violent criminals. And couple that with the attitudes of the time in the 70s, where women could often not be taken seriously, which is what a lot of the messaging in this movie is about. So this guy in real life, he was reported several times, and the reports never really stuck. But then we have this other kind of side story going on with the serial killer. So we've seen him kill people and stuff, and we've seen the tactics that he uses. His intelligence and ability to kind of be a chameleon and be whatever the woman needs him to be for him to get through to her. But then we see this other little story going on with him where, because he's a photographer, and so he's showing off his portfolio to people. And then he sees this young looking guy, this like, you know, cute kind of twunk looking kid, like a college age dude. And he invites this guy out for a photography session. He's like, hey, I would like to take pictures of you. You look like a good model for me. But then while he's talking to this guy seems ready to accept, and he does. But then while he's talking to him, he gets interrupted by another person who says, hey, the police want to talk to you. It's a really awkward moment, because he's talking to this guy about wanting to take him out on a modeling excursion. And then suddenly it's like, hey, you're getting intimidated by the police. So he's like, oh yeah, there was a break-in at my apartment, and the police were gonna get back to me. I'm glad that they've gotten back to me. Let me go talk to them. And the police, when the scene starts, you can see that the police are like, okay, we're gonna interrogate this guy because we have some dirt on him. We don't see the full conversation, but we see them coming out of the room and they're all laughing and having a good time, and they're like, sorry for the misunderstanding. So this genius was able to play the police. He knew exactly what to say to the police to get their suspicions cleared. But then, because he was almost caught, like inside this guy, he has all of this anxiety and he starts having a panic attack. And so he rushes to the restroom and starts splashing water on his face, having these panic heaves like and all of this is going on. And then he starts to realize, wait a minute, I didn't check if there was anyone else in this restroom right now. And then he peeks around the corner and he sees that college-age kid who he was talking to earlier. And this dude looks terrified because he just agreed to go on an excursion with this guy right before he saw this guy get intimidated by the police. And then this guy comes in having a panic attack, splashing water on his face, and he's hiding from him. Then he's face to face with this young kid, and this kid's like, yeah, I don't think you know what? I don't think I actually have time to do that excursion with you now that I think about it. I had some other arrangement going on. So yeah, gotta cancel it. And it's this really awkward moment because you can tell both of them know what the other is thinking. You know, this guy knows that the photographer is bad news at this point, and the photographer knows that he knows he's bad news because he's worried that this guy is gonna attack him now. And the serial killer now, he knows that this guy knows something about him, and so that could be a problem later on. So that's a little event that's happening intercut with all of this dating game stuff. And we don't know when it happens either. We don't know if this happens before the dating game or after the dating game or at what point in the chronology. But then it's revealed in a really clever way when this happened. Because we cut back to the teenage runaway, and she's with him and they're in the car driving into the desert. And he shows her his portfolio of pictures he's taken of people. And the jaw-dropping moment of this scene, and it's so clever the way they did it because they don't linger on this moment. They just kind of let it pass. It wouldn't have any significance to this girl because she doesn't know who this guy is. But she opens his portfolio and she sees a picture of that guy, of that young kid, shirtless, looking scared out of his mind. He does not look comfortable. He looks worried. It's such a great little reveal because for one thing, it reveals that this happened before the whole incident with the teenage runaway. But also, it's revealed just how intelligent and capable this guy is. That even though this college dude knew that something was bad about this guy, that this is a scary guy, should not get involved with him, and he even canceled their excursion together, somehow this serial killer managed to get him to model for him. I don't know how he did it. You know, this guy was so afraid of him in the restroom, and somehow after that, even after that whole experience, he got him in a room with him, and we can only assume he murdered him after that. But again, I love the way the movie just sort of passed by that moment without any real fanfare. Like, there was no dun dun dun, no dramatic close-up on that. It was just a picture that happened to be in his portfolio, and she's like, okay, cool, flipping through it. That made it even more kind of eerie, I think, that this little detail, she doesn't understand the significance of that detail the way we do as the audience. And then we see the photographer attack the teenage runaway. You know, and then it cuts away. And when that happens, I remember thinking, And this is the great thing about this movie and about making this video. What I like about this is I get to tell you my reactions to everything that happened, because it really is a movie that takes you on a ride. And so at this moment in the ride, I was wondering why we even saw any of that with the teenage runaway, what that was all about. Because he attacks her and then it blacks out, and then it's like, okay, is that the end of that story? Like, because it's funny, because when they drove off into the desert together, I thought, is that the end of that story? Are we going to see her again? And then when he attacks her, I thought the same thing. Is that the end of the story? Are we going to see her again? This movie keeps kind of playing with your expectations, making you wonder, well, why are they showing this? Why do we keep cutting back to this character? What is so important about her as opposed to the other victims that he has? And then while the dating game thing is going on, while the show is actually being recorded, it cuts back to that girl. And I didn't think we would cut back to her because I assumed she got killed, right? But no, she didn't. She wakes up, she opens her eyes, she's totally beaten and bruised and bloody. She's tied up, her pants are around her ankles. And he is lying down next to her, sobbing, unaware that she's probably even unaware that she's alive. And it's very interesting because then what starts running through your head is like, okay, what if I were in this situation? What if I were that girl just lying there, waking up after getting raped? How would I deal with this? It makes you think. It makes you strategize. And I was thinking, well, in that position, what you gotta do is lower this guy's defenses, because he's already sobbing. He's already emotionally vulnerable. So you can kind of turn the tables on him and get him just like he got that woman at the beginning in Wyoming. He got her in a moment of emotional vulnerability. So you can do the same thing on him. He's sobbing because he feels guilty about this or whatever. He's got his weird serial killer emotions that nobody understands. But you can look at that and go, if I get this guy to trust me in his moment of weakness, then I could escape. And so she turns to him and goes, hey, are you okay? Which of course is the most ironic thing for someone to say to someone who just brutally raped her. Are you okay? But I instantly knew what she was doing in this moment, and I thought it was really clever. And so then where I am is I'm like, okay, you better not ruin this. Like, you've set up a good opportunity for you to get your escape. Now you got to see it to its completion and not fuck up along the way, not reveal too much of your hand along the way. But she does a really good job of it. So much of this movie is about psychological games and psychological manipulation. And one of the things I love, and it's very difficult to explain how the movie does this because I only saw it that one time a couple days ago and I don't remember all the lines in the movie, but this movie does a good job. Like I said, it did a good job with the actors kind of letting you in on what the character is thinking, not necessarily saying. It does a good job at showing the push and pull, the kind of psychological war that's going on, the game that's being played, and how, like, for instance, the serial killer might slightly make a misstep, but then he figures out how to correct that. And you see the course corrections, the little minute details, the subtleties that are going on in these conversations, where people can try to get what they want out of these conversations. And so that's also what's happening with this girl. And she's like, basically she comes up with this plan where I'm gonna convince this guy to think that I'm totally cool with being raped and that I thought it was like a consensual BDSM thing. Which is nuts. But she's able to do it because this guy is so shaken. And you can tell that part of it is he's relieved that she's alive. Because he has these weird serial killer emotions where he does kind of feel bad about killing these women. And he feels bad about, like, this side of himself. That like, what am I? Am I a monster? And then like he sees that this girl is not only alive, but appreciates him. The way she convinces him of this was clever. She says, hey, can you promise? I know you're all shaken right now. We must have had a crazy night last night. I don't remember it. But can you promise? Just don't tell anyone. And so that was very clever, because then that is an implication that she won't tell anyone, which is good for him. So she knows exactly what to say to him in this moment. That lets his guard down, and she's affectionate with him. She's calling him baby, you know. She's doing all the right moves. And then they start driving back to his place. He stops to get gas. He goes into the gas station. Immediately she's gone. That's her time to escape. And then that's how the guy gets arrested. So we find out that this happens after the dating game stuff, because this is where he gets arrested. So it's kind of this out of order storytelling. I think that it was really well done, because it kind of keeps you on your toes. You're not sure what comes at what stage in the story. The most nerve-wracking scene and the most brilliant thriller scene in the movie is after the dating game is over. He wins, and then he catches her as she's leaving the studio. He's like, hey, want to go somewhere now? Get to know each other? You know, you can tell, okay, this is the moment where he's gonna try to kill her. But they're at a bar together, they're having a good conversation, and he's showing himself to be very, very intelligent. He knows exactly what to say. And Anna Kendrick's character is a very smart woman. And that's really important to this story, because this is where the real psychological game is, where she's smart and he's smart. And so he's smart enough to be smart for her, to be this like sophisticated, enlightened feminist guy. But you can tell that she's just not quite buying it. She wants to buy it. I think she's looking at this guy like, hey, I like you, but there's just something about you that's wrong. And one of the things that I think tips her off is he gets a little bit too cavalier, and he pretends that he knows this thing about her interests that he doesn't actually know, and you can tell that he doesn't actually know it. I think he's talking about like a movie director, and he's like, oh yeah, that guy, I love his work. And the way he says it, you can tell, okay, he doesn't actually know what he's talking about. And so even though this guy's really smart, he's not quite smart enough to deceive her. And also she was tipped off about this guy by Bachelor number 2 before he leaves. He says, be careful with that asshole. Another thing that's in her mind is she sees the woman who had the panic attack because she recognized Bachelor number 3. There's this brief moment where she, while having a panic attack, is leaving the building, and they lock eyes with each other for a moment. So she saw that, and that was weird. And then the thing that Bachelor number 2 says to her was also weird and suspicious. So she's kind of on edge. And of course we know with her history with this acting coach that she was living with, men not being entirely trustworthy, feeling a bit ripped off by men, a bit, you know, violated in a sense. And the whole thing with the host of the dating game being sexist to her. So all of that is going on, and so it was well set up why this woman has this suspicion about him, that even though he's doing all the right things, saying all the right things, she's just a little bit too smart for him. What makes this scene so chilling is that she is too smart for him, and it's making him mad. He's getting to the point where like he really wants to kill this woman, but he just can't because she's just not vulnerable enough for him, and it's making him angry, and he's kind of losing his cool. And you're like, oh my god, this guy could get violent at any second. And they're in this dark parking lot, you know, after they come back from the bar, they go back to the studio parking lot. He asks for her phone number, and instead of telling him, she writes it down on a piece of paper and gives it to him. And then a few minutes later, as they're about to part ways, he's like, hey, can you tell me what number you wrote on that paper? And of course, because it was just a random number, she doesn't remember. And so he's like, so he basically confronts her about it. He's like, you gave me a fake phone number. So, yeah, this isn't happening, is it? We're not going on this vacation together. And so then he straight up almost attacks her in that moment. He almost kills her in that moment. But then, like, some guys are coming out of the studio just at the right time to stop him. You know, they come out and he's like, okay, I can't do this in front of them. So she gets away. And then she just decides, okay, I'm done with acting. I'm leaving Los Angeles. But it was a very chilling scene. It was a very well done scene. Just psychologically, it just hit a lot of really good beats. At the end of the movie, there's this little epilogue. In real life, the guy was arrested after the runaway incident because she escapes the gas station and goes to a nearby cafe and calls the police on him, and so he gets arrested right then and there. But then you find out in this little epilogue that the real guy, after he gets arrested, he gets released on bail, and then he kills 2 more girls, and then he gets arrested again and sent to prison for life. So that adds a whole other element to this story, where we had the woman who was who recognized him in the studio and tried to report him. She didn't have any success. We see that not only did all these people try to report him in the past, we even had that incident where the police came and talked to him at work. That was another person reporting him. This guy was reported so many times, never, you know, faced the consequences of that. Although in real life, he actually was arrested several times and did go to jail a few times. Kind of like John Wayne Gacy, where back in the 70s, it was weird. They had no background checks back in the 70s. So somebody like this guy, or like John Wayne Gacy, could just restart their life very easily. Just go somewhere else and create a new life. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody cares. Nobody runs a background check on you. Get a new job. And so it was very easy for criminals to kind of prosper back then. And so, yeah, he gets out on bail, and so it's like, even when he gets caught, he still gets to do 2 more murders before finally getting locked away, because he got released on bail. And it's like, if this guy is arrested under suspect of being a serial killer, why on earth would you ever give him bail? You know, like that's weird. But it's kind of meant to be a social commentary, I guess, to highlight that that strange, irresponsible aspect of this story, that this guy was somehow allowed to get away with all this. He was even allowed to go on television. He had no fear of going on television with his real name and real identity, even though this guy was on, like, the FBI wanted list even. Like, this guy actually was a known criminal, and he still had the security in himself to be able to go on TV and not even get caught for it. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess one of the takeaways is that the 70s were pretty hardcore. It was pretty easy to be a criminal in the 70s, and it was pretty tough to be a woman in the 70s. But in real life, I don't know if the guy was as intelligent as he's portrayed in the film, because when you see him on the dating game, it doesn't go the way it went in the movie. It's a fictionalized retelling of the story. It's not meant to be accurate. And so in the movie, Anna Kendrick starts making up her own questions. That did not happen in real life. His responses are nowhere near as intelligent and interesting in real life as they were in the movie. So they really, I think, played up the intelligence both of Anna Kendrick's character and of his character to make the movie a more interesting story. And so, yeah, it was really good. It was a good psychological movie. There were a lot of layers to it. It had a really good structure. It had that kind of, like, Tarantino sort of out of order storytelling. very good acting. And I found out that Joe Penna, who was Mystery Guitar Man on YouTube, he was an executive producer on this movie. And that was interesting to me. Because Joe Penna is like, you know how James Rolfe is always talking about how he's a filmmaker? But he's really not. He's just a YouTuber. Joe Penna actually is the YouTuber who became a real filmmaker. Because he directed a movie with Anna Kendrick in it a while ago. But anyway, those are my thoughts on this movie, Woman of the Hour. Really good. It inspired me enough to make a video about it. There was enough there as far as interesting things that this movie did that I felt the need to say something about it, to talk about it, and that should tell you it was pretty good. I mean, not every movie does that for me.